what's it like owning a E9X generation BMW in your early 20s? Well, it's not as bad as you might think, honestly. I mean, yeah, sure, parts can get kind of expensive, but as far as reliability and, you know, maintenance, it's really not that bad. It really just comes down to which engine you get. So this is my 2011 convertible BMW 335i, and from the year 2011 and onwards, don't think it went to 2010, I think it's just 2011 onwards. In the E9X cars, you had the N55 instead of the N54. Now the N54 is very, you know, notorious engine because with just a couple bolt-ons and a tune, you're making crazy power for, well, really at the time it was crazy power. Now not so much. But it also had a nearly infinite tuning ceiling. No one really knew what it was at the time, and even now people are still pushing it to really big numbers. The N55, however, took everything that was great about the N54 and did some of it. See, the N54 had a lot of reliability and maintenance issues, a lot of things that could go wrong, especially the earlier models. As the years went on, they weren't really as bad, but there was a lot of things with the N54 that were not great that the N55 actually pretty much fixed. The only thing about the N55 though is that it's not as tunable as the N54. So, which one should you get? Well, if you're looking for the highest tuning and horsepower ceiling that you could possibly get, the potential of the N54 is pretty much unmatched. The only thing is, you're gonna spend a lot of money getting it up to that point. Not just in parts, but also, well, not just in upgrading parts, but also in maintenance. You have things such as the high pressure fuel pump, the water pump, the thermostat. You have the potential fuel pressure regulator could go out, which is pretty rare, but it happens. You have the oil filter housing gasket, the oil pan housing gasket, the valve cover gasket. You have twin turbos that like to go out after about 100,000 miles. You have wastegate rattle. You have a radiator that could possibly leak. You have coolant hoses that could leak, especially the McDonald's straw coolant hose. You have the Mickey Mouse flange that could leak. All kinds of issues, but honestly in the end, it's totally worth it for that car. The N55 has some of those problems, but not as many. So, the car I have, the N55, it has the same high pressure fuel pump as the N54 because it's an earlier year model. So the earlier year model N55s have the same high pressure fuel pump as the N54, but it's a newer revision, so it's generally a lot more reliable than the earlier ones where they don't immediately fail or fail, you know, prematurely, really. It took this one about 100,000 miles before my high pressure fuel pump started to give out. But that being said, when I got it from the dealer, it was already the way that it was. The high pressure fuel pump was already having problems, and the way I could tell is because it had a long crank. Now the crank got a little bit longer over time. Whenever I hit 100,000 miles, it got pretty long, but it would still run and drive perfectly fine. The only thing is, when I tuned the car, it wasn't pushing enough fuel to handle the tune. I wasn't getting as much power as I should have been getting, and that's how I knew the high pressure fuel pump needed to be replaced. And yeah, the high pressure fuel pump on the earlier models are very expensive. The newer ones, they're like maybe 300 bucks. On the older ones, it's $1,000. But honestly, it wasn't really that difficult to replace. Now, as far as other things that have gone wrong with this car, I mean, there's really not a lot. Surprisingly, despite what a lot of people might tell you, this car has been very mechanically solid. I've only had, I think, maybe 2 mechanical issues with it, and they were both something that the dealer didn't address. So I already told you about the high pressure fuel pump, but even then, the car on a stock tune would have been fine for even longer than when I replaced it. But I also had the radiator started leaking, and that's because the sides of these radiators are made out of plastic. But like I said, it was like that from the dealer. I didn't notice it because it was really small. But I did notice it one day, and I went back and looked at the picture of the engine bay I took at the dealership, and I could actually see coolant marks on the spot where the coolant leak was. So since my car is a convertible, it weighs about 4,000 pounds. And that means that although I am making about 390 horsepower to the crank off stage 2 plus tune on MHD, it doesn't really translate to be as fast as you think it would be, because The convertible weighs 500 to 600 pounds more than the coupe, so keep that in mind when you're looking for one of these cars. The coupe is generally, well, not even generally, it will be the fastest. So other than the radiator, which I actually replaced with a CSF radiator, which means it was fully aluminum, didn't have any plastic on it, I haven't really had any other problems with this car reliability-wise, mechanically. I've had a couple electrical things, so one thing I can tell you is the light that's on right now is from my wheel speed monitor. And the unfortunate thing is I don't know if it's the actual, the monitor that plugs into the wheel that's the problem, or if it's the one that plugs into, the one that comes from the car, because I just replaced the wheel speed monitor in my wheel and it didn't fix the problem. But I did notice that the wheel speed monitors down there that come from the car are like cracking, so the plastic is all beat up. It literally crumbled in my hand. Other than that, the only other electrical problem I've had has been I had the passenger restraint system malfunction. And basically what that means is that the pressure sensor in your passenger seat is out, but that's a really easy fix. All you have to do is you can either replace the seat, you can bring it to the dealer and have them replace the pressure sensor in the dealer for a lot of money, or you can do what I did. So I bought this kit off of eBay, and what it does is it plugs into the plug on the bottom of your seat where the pressure sensor plugs into, and it basically just tells the car that the pressure sensor is working and that somebody's sitting in it. And then you have to plug in something into that tells the car that the seatbelt is buckled, so the seatbelt light doesn't come on. And that's totally fixed. The airbag stays on, everything's totally fine. It just tells the car that someone's in the passenger seat and gets it to stop bugging you, basically. But honestly, I can say I think the most expensive thing I've had with this car has actually been wheel and tire related. So where I live, the roads are really bad. I mean, just atrocious. And so that means that I've had to replace some tires a couple times. So first thing that happened was the OEM wheels that came on this car. I was driving them around, and I actually had a giant pothole. This is how I found out about my coolant leak from the radiator. I had a giant pothole. Whenever I did, it threw coolant up onto my belt and caused it to squeak. I'm talking, this pothole was so huge that it actually left a dent in my side skirts on both sides. Because in these cars, something you need to be aware of, the M Sport suspension is very bouncy, okay? It feels amazing, but when you're driving, you know, spiritedly, but it's very bouncy. And so actually, my first time driving this car, actually no, I think my second day driving this car, followed my friend to a car wash and they had speed bumps, very steep speed bumps, okay? And I didn't really know about the suspension, how bad it was at the time. Not bad, but you know how bouncy it was. So I kind of just rode over that speed bump, normal speed, and my car literally picked up and slammed down. So that's something to keep in mind. Suspension's very bouncy, but anyway, because of that, I had to end up replacing the belt, which I did. By the way, do not buy a belt from O'Reilly or AutoZone. It's not the right size. You gotta buy it from a website. But anyway, I replaced the belt. Everything was fine. And then I went to change the radiator. That was fine. The only thing is, on the convertible, you have less engine bay space, so it's more difficult to fit, very, very difficult to fit that CSF radiator in there, but it was worth it. But what I didn't know is that I actually cracked my wheel, and I had a very, 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 very slow leak. I mean, it was so slow, I really didn't notice it at all. It took so long for the car to get down to a low pressure that it was pretty much impossible to know about. But anyways, and then I hit another pothole a while after that, and it cracked my wheel in a different place. So I actually had 2 cracks in my wheel that I had to replace. I don't know if you could tell there, but I have Valvetronic universal mufflers, and so I closed the valve so you can't even hear the car accelerating really. And I'll get to all the modifications I have on this car in a little bit. So yeah, I had to replace my wheels, so I got black wheels, 19-inch, and I had to run thinner tires. Because of that, I've had a lot more tire issues. The roads where I live are just terrible. If you're gonna put 19s on your BMW, just keep that in mind that you're gonna have a lot more tire related issues. It's gotten to a point where I will only go places that I know the roads aren't terrible, or I will drive very slowly over new roads, stuff like that. You just got to keep that in mind, honestly. It's worth it. The car looks great, but it is kind of a pain in the butt to mess with, and it's cost me a lot of money. In fact, that's the thing that's cost me the most money on this car, is wheel and tire related issues. I've had flat tires with the 19s, and I've had cracked wheels on the 18s. And even though the 18s didn't look as good as the 19s, the 18s had less issues with getting like flat tires and stuff like that. So keep that in mind if you decide you want to get one of these cars. It's something that's it's very important. It costs a lot of money. I think it's probably cost me over $3 grand, I would say, on this car. And I've had this car for a year and a half, and that's the most expensive thing I've had. Is it cost me about $3,000 total to replace wheels and tires, stuff like that. But that's even with good pricing on, you know, someone actually putting them on and everything. I have one of those crappy burble tunes on. I just throw it on to annoy people. But anyway, so yeah, that's the most expensive thing I've had with this car. Now, modification wise, I have a VRSF catted downpipe, high flow catted downpipe, because I didn't want the car to be too raspy and have kind of an annoying sound. And I'm glad I did that, because the car sounded great with it. And then I have Valvetronic universal mufflers. I have an X pipe that I believe comes stock from factory on this car. I'm not 100% for sure on that. And then I have a, I think it's a Mishimoto, it's a stock size intercooler that's upgraded. I've heard it has on par performance with a little bit of a bigger one. I don't know that for sure, but my car's been running great. I already mentioned the CSF radiator, which is super underrated. I highly recommend you guys get that, because it helps with your coolant temps so much. Seriously, don't neglect that. I have a cold air intake, and then I think that's about everything. High pressure fuel pump, and then yeah, that's about everything. And running all that, you can do stage 2 plus on MHD. It's super easy. MHD is cheap. Well, at least compared to getting your car professionally tuned, it's pretty cheap. That's all I've really done to this car, because honestly, the M55 is best for if you're gonna keep the car mostly stock, you just want to go like stage 2 or something on it. That's what the M55 is for. M54 is, you only want to get M54 if you're gonna go single turbo, honestly. That's really the only reason to get it, is if you're gonna make big horsepower numbers. M55 is perfect for keeping it mostly stock and just running stage 2. And that's all I would do to this car, because once you start getting into higher horsepower, the M55 kind of has some issues. It doesn't have forged internals, so that's a problem. Means that you can't make it as fast as you want to without having to forge the internals, or put in forged internals. Then you also have the issue with the rod bearings. So these cars can have rod bearing issues if you starve the car of oil. And if you do very specific things. So if you thrash the car around doing donuts or something, especially I've heard turning left specifically is what does it. Your rod bearings are not gonna like that. There's potential that you could wear them down. I've seen some people thrash M55s like so much and like just pretty much abuse them. Now granted, there's also part of that I'm gonna get to in a second, and they had rod bearing failure like on the spot. Now another reason that happens is from bringing the car up to high revs whenever the oil's not warmed up properly. So if you see here, I have this oil meter down here. I don't know if you can really make it out. 250. That is the operating temp of these cars, the oil operating temp. But that's like fully operational, but you can go a little bit below that, maybe like 220 or so. So I run a mod on my car through the tuning application. It keeps my oil temps a little bit lower, about 230 or so. That's perfectly fine. But if you start getting on it really before that, like really getting on it and stuff, you can definitely have rod bearing failure. So you got to keep that in mind. It's kind of like the E9X 335i, how that works out. But anyway, so other than that, the M55 also really doesn't really have a whole lot more issues. It's got the same stuff as the M54, but not as prominent. I think I'm still on my original water pump, but they can have water pump issues. I've replaced my high pressure fuel pump. and the dealer replaced my oil filter housing gasket and valve cover gasket, I believe, or maybe it was my oil pan gasket. But anyways, so those are things that you're gonna have to do eventually on this car. It's very likely. But the good thing is a lot of these parts are not too expensive. A lot of these things aren't too expensive to replace. The only thing that's really that expensive is the high pressure fuel pump. The turbos on the N55 are not known for going out. You're not gonna have wastegate rattle. It's like really not even a thing on these cars. They're just overall, if you want a reliable BMW that you can tune, N55 all the way. Now if you use MHD, you're gonna have, it's very likely you'll have some problems where the car's not gonna like the tune because maybe there's some part that's not up to par as much as it needs to be, or something happens to go wrong, you know, just from the tune. Could just be an electronic thing. This car will throw itself into limp mode over the smallest things, and if you don't have an OBD reader to clear those codes, then it's just gonna stay like that. But a lot of times, if you just clear a code, it'll just go back to normal. It's so funny. I've had that so many times on this car. I just clear a code and it goes back to normal, like nothing ever happened. It's pretty nice, honestly, for the most part. So that's something else you got to keep in mind with these cars. But yeah, N55 overall very reliable and good for, you know, just kind of base tuning. MHD Stage 2 Plus. That's really the only reason I get N55 over N54. Also, they sound way better. In fact, I think N55 sounds better than the B58. It's probably a hot take, but I don't care. I think that's true. Now, I will say you can build an N55, like I said earlier, but you're going to have to do forged internals. You have to replace your rod bearings, and that's going to be a headache. But yeah, N55, highly recommend it. E9X generation is really one of the best generations from BMW because you have the 328i, which has the N52, one of the most reliable BMW straight sixes ever. You have the N54, extremely tunable, like literally sky's the limit. N55 is a really good mix of tunability and reliability. And then you have the E92 M3 with the S65 engine, and we all know why that's awesome. Okay, the only M3 with the V8, the only commercially sold M3 with the V8. We're gonna talk about the E46 GTR. Nobody can buy that, okay? Realistically. So right now these cars go for a pretty good price. I got mine 86,000 miles for about 12 grand. I think it was about 14 after tax, title, you know, all that. And I did a $2,000 down payment, and I don't have very high note at all. In fact, I've almost paid it off totally. I'm over halfway done with it, and it's because I just started paying hefty on it at first, and then I just decided to pay like the base pay on it for a little while, and I'm gonna go back and finish paying it off hopefully by middle of next year. Pretty easy to get into one of these, honestly, but the prices for them are going up, so the convertibles are going to be cheaper, and the coupes are going to be more expensive because they're a little bit more desirable. But honestly, overall, the convertible has been pretty good to me. I haven't really had any problems with the top or any of the seals until, okay, I let some of my friends try and wrap this car and messed up my seals. So messed up one of my roof seals, and now I have a leak in my roof. Whenever it's hard raining, okay? When it's like normal raining, it's totally fine. When it's hard raining, like basically you're having water poured on you, that's when it has a problem. But other than that, it's fine. And then they also messed up my windshield seal, and I did replace that, but I think I don't know if I messed it up or if dirt got under it. I think it was dirt got under it because of where it was sitting. It was kind of bad anyway, and I should have let it sit in the sun. I didn't do it right, and so I'm gonna have to replace that probably eventually again. But that was super easy, super cheap. But I'm gonna let you guys know the seals on this car are not cheap at all, okay? Just for like one piece of the seals is like $1,500. So if you're gonna get a convertible, I haven't had any problems with the top operating, which reminds me I need to do some maintenance on it. But the seals will probably go out eventually, and you're gonna have to replace them, and that's gonna be very expensive. So I'm just gonna let you guys know up front. The main problem with these cars isn't really the reliability. It's not really the maintenance. Honestly, this car is pretty easy to work on. It's the cost of parts sometimes can get outrageous. Most things on this car are not too bad, but the convertible stuff is what makes it a pain in the butt and what makes it so expensive, because convertible parts are harder to come by since they're not really as supported as the coupe. thing about the convertible though is you can put just the back windows down. I love that. I'm gonna miss that if I ever get a coupe. But I'm planning on potentially getting a Z4 with M54 that I'm gonna go big single turbo on. We'll see. We'll see. Not really any like super specific reason. I just personally think less people mess with the Z4, so it'll be more interesting to have a Z4 someone's modified than a 335 IS, even though I love the 335 IS, and that's most likely what I'm going to end up getting anyway, but we'll see. So overall, what's it like owning a E9X generation BMW 335i at the age of 23? Honestly, it's not that bad. The only time I've had this car be on jack stands for more than like a day or so, I've had it on jack stands for 2 weeks, 2 different times. One time was for the radiator, and the other times that it's been on jack stands for an extended period of time is literally just flat tires. So mechanically, I have really not had a lot go wrong with this engine. The only problems I've had have been the things from the dealer and stuff that I've specifically have messed up. Like, well, my friend messed up my spark plugs, but I'm not gonna get into that. Also, if you're gonna do a stage 2+ tune on MHD, make sure you get 2-step coulter spark plugs and gap them down properly, okay? Because I had misfires because I didn't do that. Overall, I highly recommend an E9X generation BMW. If you want something that's low maintenance, high reliability, well, not low maintenance, but not as very high maintenance, very high reliability, and it's not too fast, but it's pretty fun, sounds good. I get a 328i, 128i, Z4, 30i, get that. If you want something that's super high for tunability, get M54, so that'd be a 335i from 2010 and below, or a 335IS, a 135i from 2010, I think 2009 below actually, I don't know specifically, or a 1M, good luck with that, or a Z4S drive, you know, 35i, 35IS. If you want something that's high reliability and it's going to give you pretty decent power, a little bit of good tunability, get an M55, great engine, sounds amazing. It's going to be 2010 up BMW, or 2011 up BMW, 335i, so on and so forth. But yeah, all that being said, guys, appreciate you watching if you stayed all the way to the end. And if you're looking to get that BMW, make sure you do your research. I'd say keep about $1,000 prepared for whenever you first get it. Have a pre-purchase inspection, and make sure that the previous owner's taking good care of it, and go get it. It's really worth it. Highly recommend it, and I love this car. I don't think I could have asked for a better first car, to be completely honest with you. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos about this car and see my journey about rebuilding my RX-8 and hopefully buying a Z4 one day, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you later.